Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jeep Journals. Today is Good Friday. Look how green it is all around me. Check out the flowers. So today I want to provide an update from the garden, but I wanted to get a few things done first. And so here I am starting the intro clip to the follow-up from a few months ago, just before the final two freezes that occurred in San Antonio. And I want to show you an update on the tomatoes. But the first thing I want to do is explain, when I talk about digging down 6 inches, that's really just the start. If you run into no rocks beneath the soil at that depth, oftentimes it's perfect planting conditions. But if you run into rocks, you have to keep going until you remove all the rocks. So sometimes I dig down quite a bit further than 6 inches to give my plants a successful start. Not only does the increase in depth provide a better habitat for the roots, but it allows for more access to the water tables that are right beneath our feet in many cases, which the plants are able to make use of in order to begin fruiting. So without much further delay, I'll probably show you a clip of what I mean, because I recorded something when I was digging to plant my lemon tree. And I'll try to narrate during that clip, but the main thing is you're seeing that I'm digging down 6 inches in order to get through the rock layer to give those lemons a chance of exceptional success. So speaking of, I lost 2.5 kilos last week. That was 5 pounds. And I'm on track to do the same thing this time. I learned that going without meat alone didn't necessarily change anything in terms of my weight. However, going 100% vegan provided results that were nothing short of miraculous. My increased energy level and metabolism and decrease in ill health is like a miracle. And once again, we're here sweating out toxins in nature. And like that other cat up the road says, we ain't even had breakfast yet. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay tuned. Right here, I'm doing an initial depth check, and you can see I'm almost at an appropriate depth. But as I dug down a little bit further, I found that there were some further obstructions that I would need to work past. Here you can see the pry bar that I use, which is one of basically 4 tools that I use to excavate the holes that I make for these plants that I'm planting in my garden. As you can see, there are quite a few large rocks here that, once they're removed, will provide some better opportunities for the roots to grow down into the water tables that are beneath our feet. And here's all the stuff that I dug out of that hole, some of which I'm going to use to backfill after I fill the hole with organic soil and plant the plant. If you don't get your hands dirty too often, you might not know the benefit of working with the microbes that are right underneath our feet in some cases. The benefits of tending to our own garden go far beyond the ability to have an occasional fresh tomato or lemon. Here I'm still working with a pretty solid clay layer, which probably would be easier to dig out with the pry bar, but for the purpose of recording this scene, I was able to use the pry bar and uncover some paper, a relic from the past, I guess. Do any of you know what this stands for, what we're looking at? Because I don't. After putting away this relic from the past, I got back to work. If you look really closely, you'll see that there's another layer of roots down at the bottom of this hole. Sometimes that's what I dig through. I dig through the clay layers until I find where the roots begin again, which makes me believe that that which is going to be planted here will have a better rate of success because it too will be able to reach the high root layer and also the low root layer. Normally I'll separate the soil from the rocks and I'll use the rocks kind of as a finishing touch on the top of my backfilled hole, which kind of prevents the rooting animals from coming by and nosing up any of the hard work that I've done here. Speaking of rocks, a lot of times I'll add some beautiful polished rocks to the bottom of the holes that I'm digging, especially when I'm planting fruit trees. It's sort of just my own good luck token, in addition to the high quality organic soil, of course, to help these trees get off to a great start. Here you'll see I didn't dig the hole too much wider than the pot that this plant came in, and in fact I actually went quite a bit deeper than the dimensions of what this pot originally was. So where many people will recommend that you dig the hole wider, normally what I recommend is try to remove as many rocks as possible and give the roots twice the distance versus what they had in the original pot that they were in. And any roots that come up at the ground level will be strong enough to travel, especially in our native soil here in Texas. So this is in San Antonio, Texas. If you're watching from some other location, you might have different circumstances. But right here, what I'm doing is backfilling the small amount of gap with organic soil. And then you'll notice in a while that I start backfilling with some of the top layer and middle layer and rocks that I dug up from underneath where this plant is going to be living now. Besides the beautiful sound of all the birds that you hear singing around me, one thing you can't quite grasp from just watching this video is just how beautiful the blossoms on this lemon tree smell. There's nothing quite like it. If you have a nursery nearby, you should go visit it and try to see if you can smell the blooms on a blooming lemon tree. There is nothing quite like it. It's fantastic. It's just as fragrant as, for an example, the mountain laurels that also bloom quite fragrantly here in the San Antonio, Texas region and throughout Texas. Speaking of things that grow locally, look in the center of the frame at that spear grass. At least that's what we called it when we were children. How many of you remember spear grass? The more that we let our backyard grow native, the more that we see that this type of grass takes back over. And it requires very little water compared to the previous lawn of just St. Augustine that we used to have to, keep up with everyone else. And here at this point, you can see I'm backfilling with a top layer of large rocks, something that maybe an opossum wouldn't come by and be able to easily just nose out of the way. You saw me separate a rock out into a bucket as well. Some of these rocks that I pulled up are a little bit more like flint or something that I can tumble. And when I tumble those rocks, sometimes I'll get these beautiful rocks, which of course you saw pretty much go back into the cycle of life by being planted at sometimes just the bottom of these holes that I'm digging. And sometimes they're quite remarkable, and I'll use them to make different items to give to people as gifts. Anyway, check out these flowers. They smell so good. And now let's move back on to the tomatoes. Check it out. There's already some fruit on this tomato plant. They're all doing quite well. And even if you can't tell from this video clip, the plants are quite a bit larger and they filled out. And as you saw, there's fruit in some cases already. Hey everybody, so here I am in the garden and the tomatoes are looking pretty great. Many of these plants already have fruit on them. The ones that I planted right before the last freezes did quite well. And I think it's because the roots were pretty well into the ground, which was warm enough to keep them alive during the freeze. So here are the plants when they initially started out and when they were initially planted. So this is before, after. And I'm sure you can tell there's quite a significant difference. And just like the other one that I planted by the fence, this is before, and this is after, quite a bit larger. So flashing back to earlier today, Good Friday, Easter weekend of 2022, here you can see a couple of cups from one of our major suppliers of entertainment beverages, and also you can see through the trees a beautiful cardinal that originally had gotten my attention. The more I visit these hard to reach places and find that there are bits of debris just errantly thrown into these places so carelessly, the more I wonder what it's going to look like in our easy to access places and what kind of a symptom we must all be experiencing when we see this type of ill health. Until next time, thank you for watching. Peace, love, and all that old school stuff.